When I saw my grandchildren open presents with everyone but me, while I sat 2 towns over, uninvited, forgotten, I knew this holiday season would be the last one they'd ever forget, for the most unexpected reason. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I always thought the loneliest sound in the world was the ticking of a clock in an empty room. That slow, steady echo that reminds you just how still the air is, how no one is coming, how nothing is changing. But I was wrong. The loneliest sound in the world is your grandchildren's laughter echoing through a phone speaker while you sit alone, 2 towns away, holding a wrapped present with no name tag, because no one was supposed to receive it. Because no one invited you to give it. Because someone decided, quietly and collectively, that you no longer mattered. This year, for the first time in 34 Christmases, I wasn't there. Not even a chair with my name on it. No stocking. No spot on the couch. No voice calling out, "Grandpa's here." They didn't tell me outright, of course. That would have taken spine. Honesty. Maybe even respect. No, what they did was worse. "Dad, the kids have been sick off and on, and we just don't want to risk anything," Julie had said over the phone. For days before Christmas Eve. Her voice was tight, scripted, like she'd rehearsed the excuse with her husband. Like she was canceling a hair appointment, not gutting an old man's holiday. I still remember the way her voice dipped at the end of that sentence. Like even she didn't believe what she was saying. I could hear a cough in the background, fake as a cardboard fireplace, and a shuffling sound that might have been her hand muting the phone so she could laugh. "Oh?" I asked, quiet. I already knew. "We just thought it would be better if everyone did their own thing this year. Maybe we can do something in February." February. Like I was a side dish. Like I could be reheated and served cold a week later and still call it a celebration. I remember sitting there in the recliner and used to love. The one with the quilt folded over the back, faded now, but still soft where she used to rest her head. The fireplace was flickering. The stockings were hung just like always. One for Julie. One for Thomas. One each for the grandkids. And one for Anne. I couldn't bring myself to take hers down. Not even after 6 winters. She would have said I was being sentimental. But she also would have said what Julie and Thomas did was cruel. And then never lied. I hung up the phone and sat there for a long while. Hours, probably. The coffee in my mug turned cold. The snow outside started falling harder. The clock ticked on like nothing had happened. I told myself I'd drop by anyway. Just to wave. Just to leave the gifts on the porch. I even went to grab my coat. But something stopped me. A whisper of suspicion, maybe. Or pride. Or both. I pulled out my phone instead, opened that social media app Julie had once insisted I install so I could keep up with everyone. And there it was, posted 3 hours ago. A picture. Julie's living room. Decorated to the nines. Fire blazing. Wrapping paper everywhere. Matching red and green pajamas on all 6 of them, even Thomas, who supposedly had to work late. The caption read, "Christmas at home with our favorite people." Favorite people. Like I'd been auditioning. And lost. I stared at that photo until the screen blurred, not from tears, no, those wouldn't come until later, but from the sting. The shame. The sudden, nauseating realization that I hadn't been forgotten by accident. I'd been left out on purpose. I got up slowly, walked down the hall, and opened the closet. The wrapped gifts sat there neatly. I'd even labeled the ones for the grandkids with their favorite ribbons. I didn't throw them away. That's not my style. I just closed the door and walked back to Anne's chair. And then I sat. And I thought. The holidays had never been easy after she died. I tried to keep the family together, for her, mostly. I swallowed a lot of disappointments in the name of peace. Smiled through a lot of dinners that left me feeling invisible. But this? This was different. This was deliberate. That's when something shifted. Because what they didn't know, what they never thought to consider, was that this house, the one they never visited unless they needed something, held more than old photographs and dusty furniture. It held records. Proof. Paper trails. It held every check I ever wrote when Julie's husband got laid off in 2014. Quiet money, no questions asked. It held the title to the old Buick Thomas drove into a retention pond and blamed on a deer at dusk. I paid the insurance, covered the damage, and never brought it up again. It held receipts, tuition payments, wedding venue deposits, emergency hospital bills I covered in full. Thousands of dollars. Hundreds of quiet sacrifices. I kept every one of them. Tucked into drawers, folders, fireproof boxes. Because and always said, don't make them feel guilty for your generosity. Just be prepared to remember. And I had remembered. But most importantly, that house held my will. Not just the legal one in the safe. The real one, in my bones. The one that said, I will not die a forgotten man. I will not be erased from the family I built. And that's where the story really begins. The day after Christmas, I received a message from Thomas. Not a call. Not even a voice note. Just a message. Hope your Christmas was relaxing. Julie made this almond cake thing you used to like. Should have saved you a slice, LOL. That LOL at the end, it killed me. Like they knew I'd been forgotten. Like it was a joke they could shrug off. I typed out a dozen responses. Deleted every one. A few hours later, Julie called. She made a show of acting surprised when I picked up. Dad. You finally answered. As if I'd been the one ignoring her. She jumped right into it. No apology. Just logistics. So listen, we're planning to bring the kids up to Lake Geneva in February, you know, the cabin you used to take us to, and we were thinking, maybe you could help with a few things. Like what? Oh, just, you know, help us reserve it under your name since it's always been easier that way, and maybe cover the deposit. It's just temporary, Palmer's bonus got delayed. Palmer's bonus. There it was again. A problem that only my bank account seemed able to fix. I'll think about it, I said, keeping my voice flat. Come on, Dad, she laughed. Don't be that way. It's tradition, remember? You've always helped. Helped. Always helped. That was the role they'd written for me. Background support. The man who showed up when the furnace broke, or when their dog needed emergency surgery, or when the credit card bill was a little too high after a rough quarter. Later that week, Thomas came by. He didn't call first, just showed up with his car idling outside and a look on his face like he had somewhere better to be. Dad, he said, glancing at his watch, you still have that snow blower, right? Mine's jammed and Steph's threatening to call a plow service again. I brought him to the shed. Watched him poke around like he'd never held a tool in his life. You got a dolly? He asked. This thing's heavier than I thought. You know, you could invite me over sometime, I said casually. He blinked at me, confused. What, to your place? No. To yours. Oh. He scratched his neck, clearly uncomfortable. Yeah, sure. I mean, we've just been really busy, you know. He wasn't trying to be cruel. That was the worst part. He just didn't think I mattered. Later that night, I sat in Anne's chair again. Same spot. Same ticking clock. The fire had gone out hours ago, and the cold was starting to settle into the corners of the room, but I didn't move. I poured myself a finger of whiskey, just one, like I used to when Anne was alive, and let it warm my chest while I pulled the old photo album from the shelf. The leather spine cracked when I opened it. The pages smelled like dust and memories. There it was, 1998. Julie's 6th birthday. I'd built her a puppet theater out of leftover plywood and an old red curtain and found at a thrift store. I'd stayed up 3 nights sanding and painting it, blue and yellow, her favorite colors back then. I remember her running into the backyard, squealing with delight. She smiled so wide, she lost her front tooth mid-laugh. Wouldn't let go of me for the rest of the day. Called me the best daddy in the universe, in front of everyone. Funny how that version of her evaporated somewhere along the way. I turned the page. There was Thomas, high school graduation, class of 2007. He stood near the podium in his gown, arms slung around his friends, grinning like a king. I'd been in the back row of the gym, pressed against the bleachers, because Julie and her mom had taken the last 2 seats. I didn't mind at the time. I thought, this is what a father does. He makes space. He claps the loudest. He celebrates even when no one's watching him. But he never looked for me. Never waved. Never thanked me. And noticed. She'd squeezed my hand, leaned in close, and whispered, "They'll see it one day, Roy. They'll understand." But they didn't. And she's not here to remind them anymore. I flipped more pages. Julie's wedding, half of it paid for with my savings. She wanted an outdoor ceremony, and when it rained that morning, I drove across town in a downpour to pick up 50 umbrellas so the guests wouldn't get soaked. She mentioned it once in her toast. Said I was resourceful. Not generous. Not selfless. Just resourceful. Thomas again, age 25. I helped him move into that downtown apartment after his 3rd failed startup. Carried 3 flights worth of boxes while he took phone calls on the balcony. He never even offered me water. I remember sitting on a stack of his kitchen chairs while he talked about his next big idea. I nodded and smiled, because that's what I was supposed to do, support, without asking anything in return. What they don't realize is that respect doesn't vanish in a flash. It dies in pieces. A phone call that never comes. A birthday forgotten. A story you start telling at dinner, only for someone to change the subject halfway through. The way their eyes glaze over when you bring up your doctor appointment, or how they sigh when you talk about your garden, like your life is just static, white noise humming in the background of their busy, important lives. Like your only remaining value is how quietly you fade into the corner of the room. Like you're just a body waiting for a final breath in a cleared-out garage. I'd rather they hated me. Hate, at least, requires effort. Emotion. Recognition. No, what they gave me was worse. They stopped seeing me as a person. Stopped looking me in the eyes when they asked for help. Stopped thanking me when I gave it. Stopped asking what I wanted, or if I was lonely, or what I planned to do on Christmas now that Mom was gone. And as I sat there, thumbing through pages of moments I had paid for, financially and emotionally, I realized something simple and sharp. They'd gotten too comfortable with forgetting me. And comfort is a dangerous thing. Comfort means they believe I'll always be there. Always pick up. Always say yes. Always show up with a check and a smile, even if they've left me out in the snow. But they forgot something and never did. I don't make noise. I make moves. It was time they remembered who taught them how to stand on their own 2 feet. And they were about to learn what happens when the man they stepped over decides to stand back up. Not with words. With action. The morning after I closed the photo album, something in me clicked into place. Not rage. Not sadness. Focus. The kind of focus I hadn't felt in years. Not since and past. Not since the kids stopped needing me, unless it was financial. I started by cleaning out the den. The desk drawer hadn't been opened in months, but inside was everything I needed, old folders, a locked box, and a dusty spiral notebook with Anne's initials scribbled on the inside cover. Each folder was labeled by year. Each one filled with copies of every bank transfer, every tuition invoice, every bailout, bridge loan, and gift gone unacknowledged. Julie's wedding, $26,500. Thomas's car repair, $8,200. Private school deposits, late mortgage payments, medical deductibles, new fridge, broken AC, surprise baby shower contributions, it went on and on. I wasn't bitter, not yet. I'd given freely. But now I was going to take account. Next came the will. I hadn't touched it since the year-end passed. It still listed Julie and Thomas as equal heirs. 50-50. A tidy split of the house, the investment accounts, and what little was left of the savings I'd spent my life building. I took a pen and scratched a note at the top, update with Charles next week. Charles was my estate attorney. Good man. Steady hands. He'd handled everything after Anne's death, never asked questions when I gave instructions that sounded more emotional than legal. This time, I'd give him very clear directions. No more ambiguity. No more equal distribution. I made a new list, on a yellow legal pad this time. The house, donate to the Veterans Fund and use to volunteer for. Investment accounts, redirected to a scholarship in her name, kids from working-class homes, especially those studying nursing or engineering. Savings, left to the church, earmarked for repairs and food drives. Antique tools, for Lionel. That boy had fixed my snow blower for free last year and refused payment. Letters, one for Julie. One for Thomas. I'd write them last. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vengeful. But I'd decided something very important. They didn't get to inherit what they ignored. They didn't get to cash in on the man they'd erased. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it was movement. It was the first pull of the trigger. And I hadn't even aimed yet. Let them keep laughing. Let them post their brunch photos and their filtered lives. They thought I was the past. They'd forgotten I'm the reason they had a future. And I was just getting started. By mid-January, Julie called again. This time, she sounded like she was trying to smile through something. Dad. We were just talking about how we haven't seen you in weeks. She paused. Waited for me to fill the silence. I didn't. So. Thomas and I were thinking, it might be nice to do a little family dinner. Just us. No big production. You know, reconnect. Reconnect. A word people use when they've already unplugged from you. I agreed. Because I wanted to see their faces when the ground beneath them started to crack. We met at Julie's place. Same house I helped co-sign 5 years ago. The porch light flickered as I walked up, funny how those little details stick out when you're looking at something through different eyes. Julie opened the door. Overdressed, overcompensating. She hugged me too tight. Dad, you look great. Doesn't he look great, Palmer? Palmer smiled the way a man smiles at a bank loan officer. Trim as ever, sir. Still doing your morning walks? I didn't answer. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary chicken and desperation. Thomas arrived a few minutes later, loud on purpose. Dad. Been meaning to catch you. We're long overdue for a real chat. His wife, Stephanie, followed him in, arms loaded with store-bought desserts. She gave me a quick peck on the cheek, already scanning the room for a seat near someone she didn't have to impress. The dining room had been set with real plates. Cloth napkins. Wine glasses. None of this had been used at Christmas, of that I was sure. But tonight? Tonight they were laying the scene. We sat. Talked. Laughed. Or rather, they did. I listened. Thomas talked about refinancing. About how tight things have been, but we're really looking at new options. Julie chimed in with how expensive the twins' daycare has gotten, and you wouldn't believe what Palmer's insurance plan doesn't cover. All of it delivered with breezy, hollow chuckles, as if the words weren't veiled invoices. They asked me how I was. I told them I'd started clearing out some things in the house. Silence. Not long, but just long enough. Julie's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Palmer poured more wine with a shaky hand. Clearing out, she echoed, like the phrase had spooked her. Yeah, I said calmly. Files. Cabinets. Some old insurance papers. Just tidying things up. Thomas tried to laugh. Sounds like you're getting ready for a spring cleaning spree. Something like that. We kept eating. Julie brought out dessert. Thomas opened a second bottle of wine. Palmer suggested we do this more often. Everyone smiled too wide. Everyone asked how my health was. Everyone avoided asking what I was planning. Because they knew something had shifted. The mask slipped further when Julie tried, too casually, to ask about the house. You still planning to keep that place after the winter, Dad? I mean, the stairs can be tricky at your age. And it's a lot of square footage for just one person. I smiled at her, slow and steady. I've got plans for it. Don't worry. That was the moment the room went cold, even though the heater clicked on. Because they all knew. I wasn't playing along anymore. They always say people reveal themselves slowly, like leaves falling from a tree. That night, it took less than an hour. After dessert, Thomas asked if I wanted coffee. Julie and Palmer were already in the living room, pretending to browse through a photo album that hadn't been opened since Anne's funeral. In the kitchen, he poured from a fresh pot. Didn't look at me. Dad, he said finally, voice low. You, mentioned something earlier. About clearing out the house. I sipped my coffee. Said nothing. He continued. I was wondering if you needed help. Like, with any legal documents or, asset stuff. Asset stuff. There it was. He took another stab at subtlety. Steph's uncle, you remember Steve, he's a CPA. Does estate stuff all the time. Could look over things, just to be safe. To be safe. I repeated. Thomas finally looked up. I mean, you never know, right? With health being what it is and all. You said your knee's been acting up. My knee. The same knee I used to carry him on piggyback through Yosemite. The same knee that helped me lay hardwood in his first apartment. It wasn't about the knee. It was about the clock ticking in his head. The one that said this man is nearing the end, and maybe he hasn't finalized the paperwork. I let the silence stretch. Then I smiled. You know what, son? You're right. Things should be settled. I've actually already taken care of it. His eyebrows jumped. Oh. Already? Yep. Called Charles last week. A flicker of panic behind his eyes. Charles, the, lawyer? The very one. He tried to look casual, sipping his coffee too quickly. Cool. So, everything squared away? Everything, I said. House, accounts, investments. All spoken for. He didn't ask who they were spoken for. He didn't have the nerve. But the silence said everything. He hadn't come to offer help. He'd come to confirm he was still in line. And now he wasn't so sure. Back in the living room, Julie's act cracked just a little, too. So. Dad, she said, crossing her legs with the forced grace of someone who wanted to appear calm but couldn't stop wringing her fingers. That cabin trip we mentioned, Lake Geneva, it's actually gotten a bit more expensive than we thought. Ridiculous. Palmer jumped in. Yeah, total bait and switch. They raised the deposit, like, last minute. Julie smiled weakly. We were thinking, it could be our gift from you. You always said memories were more important than things. She was quoting me. Badly. I didn't answer. Palmer tried again. Just the deposit. Nothing crazy. We'd cover the rest. I leaned back in the chair. Took my time. Let the silence wrap around us. Then, funny thing about memories. They only mean something if everyone's actually there for them. Julie paled. Palmer coughed into his hand. Thomas reappeared in the doorway, lips pressed into a thin line. No one spoke for a long time. They were all sitting with the same realization. The man they'd underestimated was no longer theirs to manipulate. They just didn't know how bad it was going to get yet. But they would. 2 days after that dinner, I visited Charles. He took one look at my expression and pushed his stack of forms aside. No small talk today, he asked. No time, I replied. I handed him a sealed envelope. Inside, the updated distribution instructions, final asset reallocation, and 2 letters, one for Julie, one for Thomas. He read everything twice, like he always did. Then he looked up. You sure about this? I nodded. Dead sure. Anything you want me to say to them when they call? If they call, I said, tell them nothing. Let them stew. He slid the papers into a fresh folder and gave me a look I hadn't seen in years. Pity. Not for me. For them. That afternoon, I went to the house. Not mine. Theirs. Julie and Palmer weren't home yet, but I had a key. She'd given it to me 2 Christmases ago when they went to the Bahamas. Just in case, she'd said. You're always our safety net. Funny how keys stay in your pocket long after trust disappears. I wasn't there to steal or snoop. I was there to leave something behind. I walked through the kitchen, down the hallway, past the dining room with the still too new table I helped pay for. In the den, I placed a small black envelope behind the photo of Julie's wedding, wedged just far enough in the frame that only someone cleaning thoroughly would find it. The envelope contained one thing, a copy of her Christmas Day photo. I'd written a note on the back. Favorite people, huh? Just wait. That night, I was back in Anne's chair. I'd just finished mailing the scholarship paperwork when I remembered something, an old USB stick and had used for photos. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just lonely. So I plugged it in. There were thousands of pictures. Vacations, graduations, birthdays. Julie hugging me on Father's Day, Thomas asleep on the couch with his newborn. The kind of images that used to make me feel like a success. Then I found a folder I didn't recognize. Titled, From Julie, 2019. Inside was a video. I clicked. The quality was grainy, but the audio was sharp. Julie and Palmer. Sitting at my kitchen table. I remember the day now, she'd said she was coming by to check on me after my blood pressure scare. What I hadn't realized was that she'd left her phone recording. In the video, she looked annoyed. Palmer leaned in close. So. Did you ask him about the house yet? Julie shook her head. Not yet. He's still emotional about Mom. Palmer scoffed. Babe, we've waited long enough. You know how much equity is in that place. If we don't lock it down before he dies, Thomas is gonna claim half. Julie sighed. I know. I just need to get him to suggest the idea, so it doesn't look like we're pressuring him. Palmer smirked. Good. Because once that place is ours, we can Airbnb it in the summers and make a killing. Julie smiled. Dad always said family comes first. So he'll understand. Eventually. The video ended. I sat there, breath shallow. They'd planned it. For years. Every call, every check-in, every tight smile, scripted. Julie. My daughter. She had looked me in the eyes and said I love you, while scheming to carve up my home like it was an inheritance buffet. That was the final betrayal. Not the exclusion. Not the manipulation. But the performance. I wasn't their father anymore. I was their investment. By Friday, the calls began. Thomas first. 3 missed calls. Then a voicemail. Hey, Dad, just had a weird conversation with Charles. Tried to ask a few basic things and he said everything's already been taken care of. I don't understand. Call me. Then Julie. Dad, it's me. I think we need to talk about your will. Not because of anything, just, we're concerned. I know we joked about it before, but Palmer and I really think there's been a mistake. Can we come by? I didn't answer. Because it wasn't time for them to get answers. Not yet. The next blow came Monday morning. Julie called me, this time from a blocked number. I answered on speaker while brewing coffee. Why is the mortgage company calling us? She snapped, voice already cracking. They said the co-signature's been revoked and there's a lien being reviewed. I notified the bank last week, I said calmly. I don't co-sign anymore. You can't just pull out. That's illegal or unethical or. No, it's not. I checked. The agreement allowed termination under re-evaluation of relationship. It's right there in the small print. Palmer should have read it. Dead silence. Then, Venom, you're ruining us. I took a sip of coffee. No, Julie. I'm just no longer building a castle you don't let me live in. Click. Tuesday, Thomas tried to visit in person. I didn't open the door. He stood outside yelling my name, pacing the porch like a salesman with no pitch. Eventually, he left a note in the mailbox. Please call me. We can fix this. Fix. They always reached for that word when they were losing control. Wednesday, the charities posted a thank you message online. I didn't share it. But Julie's friend forwarded it to her. She called again. Screaming this time. You gave away the house. The whole house. That's our childhood. Our memories. Memories you didn't want me in, I replied. You're being cruel. No, I said softly. I'm being remembered. Thursday, I visited Lionel at the mechanic's shop. Gave him the antique tools and the deed to my old truck. The boy cried. Hugged me like I was family. Funny. No blood between us. Yet he never once forgot to ask how I was doing. By Saturday, both Julie and Thomas had resorted to groveling. A joint voicemail. Dad, we're sorry. We were stupid. We took you for granted. We just thought there'd be more time. Can we please just talk? I listened twice. Deleted it. Then wrote the final letter. They arrived like children summoned to the principal's office. Julie in heels too high for the snow, mascara smudged from either crying or rushing. Thomas in his usual too-tight blazer, trying to look composed but sweating through the collar. They hadn't seen each other since the news broke. The house, gone. The accounts, closed. The scholarships and donations, publicly announced. They came to my house, the one they never visited unless they needed something, because I'd told them there would be a family meeting. No details. Just that they should come. No kids. No spouses. Just them. When they walked in, I was already seated at the head of the dining table. The same table and once used for birthday cakes and Thanksgiving pies. Charles, my attorney, sat beside me, papers stacked neatly, expression unreadable. Dad, Julie started, her voice brittle, can we please just talk? You'll get your chance, I said. After you listen. They sat. Not because they wanted to, but because they needed to. Charles opened a folder and began reading. I, Roy Allen Merritt, being of sound mind and firm will, make the following decisions regarding my estate while I am alive, alert, and observant. To my daughter Julie. You once said memories matter more than things. I agree. You'll find every photo, every home video, and every keepsake from your childhood boxed and ready in the garage. That is your inheritance. To my son Thomas. You always joked that I kept too many records. Now you'll see why. You are entitled to every financial file documenting the support you received over the last 30 years. From bailouts to birthday gifts, you wanted transparency. You now have it. To both of you. The house you were waiting for has been donated. The investments you silently counted on have been redirected. The savings you assumed would fall in your laps have already changed hands. You get nothing that can be sold. Nothing that can be fought over. Only the truth. That love is not a blank check. And patience is not permission. Julie's mouth fell open. Thomas stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Charles pushed forward 2 sealed envelopes. One for each. Letters from your father. Personal. Optional. I watched them just stare at the envelopes like they might bite. Julie broke first. Dad, she whispered. Why are you doing this? I leaned forward. I'm not doing anything, Julie. I'm finishing something. Thomas shook his head. You're punishing us. For not calling. For not visiting enough. No, I said. I'm correcting a mistake. I taught you both that love meant always saying yes. Always being there. Always giving. I let that sit. And that's not love. That's convenience. They didn't cry. Not then. They sat in silence and held their letters. And when they left, they did so slowly, like people exiting a church after the sermon convicted them of something they didn't know they'd done wrong. I watched from the window as they walked to their cars in opposite directions. No goodbye. No hug. No plans to speak again. Just 2 shadows, leaving behind the man they once thought would never push back. Later that night, I sat in Anne's chair, just like always. Fire crackling low. Whiskey in hand. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. But I felt present. For the first time in years. I had no family around me. But I also had no weight left on my shoulders. And as the snow started falling outside, soft and quiet, I realized. Sometimes the coldest winter is the one that finally makes you feel alive again.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.